they've added fiber, and then they say that's better. They're not better. They are still refined and processed and are going to hit that bloodstream fast with the glucose, all right, and throw off your insulin levels, which is going to contribute to belly fat. Hi, welcome to the Judy Terrell Show, where I explore topics intended to optimize everybody 50, 60, 70, and above. Hi, everybody, and welcome to your second 50. You are in my series number 13, and the topic I'm addressing in this series is how to reduce belly fat in men and women, both when you're over 50, 60, 70, and beyond. Different set of circumstances than when you were younger, and that is contributing to this belly fat. And it is not a fatalistic thing. You do not have to have it when you are past menopause for females or over 60 for males, because I've helped literally hundreds, if not thousands, of my individual clients to reduce and lose that belly fat in our age groups. Okay, so welcome everybody. You are joining me on episode number 3 of a 6-part series. I've been addressing cortisol and insulin, because these are the two hormonal factors that come into play that set you up for belly fat when you're over 50 years old. And I've addressed the cortisol side of the equation for the first 2 episodes. And now for the next 2, I'm going to talk about the insulin side. All right. So cortisol is a stress hormone. We need it, but if we have too much of it, it's a bad thing. Insulin is a hormone that helps us to take the sugar out of our bloodstream from digestion, which we need, okay, and then pull it, into the liver and our working muscles, and then it goes to either work or storage, all right? So insulin, as we well know, is a very important hormone, and as with everything in the human body, if you have too much of it, it's not good. If you have too little of it, it's not good. So we're looking for that sweet spot, all right? So let me say a little bit more about insulin. When you have too low of an insulin, that is type 1 diabetes, and you can die from it, and it can do significant organ damage and tissue damage. It is not a good thing, because without insulin, sugar stays at a high level in your blood. It is getting into all your cells, so it starts to muck up the work of your heart and your liver and your kidneys and the skin and its tissue, and it causes a deadening of the tissue, because it kills it. Sugar should not be that high. And then you have amputations, diabetic, neuropathies and amputations. Bad. So having not enough insulin is not good, but having too much of it on a chronic high basis, which then leads to insulin resistance, is also not good. All right. Because then your body kind of adapts. It's still producing insulin, and insulin's really, really high. And it's really high because of your eating and your choices of specifically carbohydrates, but also fats. And then your body is trying to adapt to that. So, it doesn't respond to it the same way it would if you were eating in a more healthful manner. All right. So how you eat is directly responsible for the insulin level, and other factors come into play in the levels of cortisol, which we're addressing separately. So in this episode, I want to talk to you about when you're over 50, men and women both, what we can do to help to keep insulin in the sweet spot, because when you go through menopause as females, estrogen used to kind of buffer the response of insulin and help keep it in a more level basis, even if you're eating things that produced it at a high level. All right. Now that you're post-menopause, that estrogen isn't there to help with it. So now you're more resistant to insulin. And when it's really, really high from the way you're eating, this is the perfect storm when combined with cortisol for belly fat. And then, even though you don't have the same menopause, dramatic hormonal changes that we do as women, you still do have hormonal changes that occur as you age. And that also sets you up for being more susceptible to high insulin resistance and high insulin. That's a result of that. The insulin resistance is the result of high insulin, which is the result of your food choices, right? So men are susceptible to this as much as females are. All right. And men, even though men, genetically, gender-wise, sex hormone-wise, would tend to put belly fat on even when they were younger men, even women now who didn't tend to put belly fat on, they put it more on their hips and thighs because their estrogen is down and we have now more testosterone, relatively speaking, post-menopause. We now have a fat accumulation pattern that's more like men. So that explains why if you're a woman past menopause, you're like, why do I have belly fat? I never had it before. It's partly due to we are now putting fat on similar to the way men do because our sex hormone profile is closer to them now as we're post-menopause. But in both those situations, men and women both over 50, how you're eating and your food choices can have a positive effect on the insulin situation, regardless of where you are with the sex hormone changes as you age. All right. So I'm going to address that right now. So what produces the need for higher insulin? You know, we eat foods, and foods are combinations of protein, carb, and fat, and specifically carbs that then get broken down into glucose, which is sugar, not sucrose, table sugar, not high fructose corn syrup, which are also sugars, but our body takes fruit sugar and, you know, sugar in vegetables like broccoli and lettuces and red peppers and grain products like, you know, whole wheat, bulgur wheat and brown rice and sweet potatoes. All those things get digested into glucose. And glucose is what runs it's like the gas for our body. All right. You have to have a certain amount of it circulating. Otherwise, your body's not going to go into fat, you know, for energy because it feels like there'd be a crisis. So there's a sweet spot for the amount of glucose that's always circulating in your blood. But unfortunately, in our, you know, eating food world here in the 21st century, there are a lot of foods that everybody eats and everybody wants to eat that are processed and ultra refined or refined more so than a whole food. And these foods in particular are buffering up the insulin, increasing blood sugar levels way beyond what they should be to stay in the sweet zone. And that, when you're eating foods that do this, that creates a insulin resistance situation. When that's combined with high stress and cortisol, you might as well just glue the belly fat on your belly. All right. So what can you do? What do you need to do when it comes to your food choices that can help to reduce belly fat when you're over 50? I am so excited to announce your second 50.life. I have been working in the fitness industry with individuals, both men and women, over 50 years old for 42 years and really specialized in the last 10 on over 50. I'm over 50 myself by a long shot. And I've helped literally thousands of men and women both to lose the extra body fat that they gain in the second half of their life. 2, feel better in their own bodies energetically. I have helped people to reverse and eliminate health problems, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, pre-diabetes, symptoms of menopause, to name just a few. On this platform, you will have access to an entire body of resources, exercise videos, mini courses, eating plans that are specially designed for over 50 men and women because there's special needs for our demographic. And in addition to the virtual resources that you'll have access to if you join at any time that you'd like, you also have access to me for one-on-one coaching through a group coach call every month. So you can bring your specifics and we can address those as you're also getting information that is specific to the over 50 population. 50s, 60s, 70s, and now 80s is the demographic that I'm working with. So it's your second 50.life, YOURSECOND 50.life. Go check it out. It might be the single best thing that you've looked at like in your second 50s. You need to choose whole food, starchy carbohydrates as much as possible. And I'm not going to say never eat the refined stuff, but when you were younger, you could have a higher amount of that refined stuff and still get away with not having the belly fat. But now that you're older, that is a different equation now for some of the reasons I just briefly described with the changes of the sex hormones. All right. So, you need to be focusing on these starchy carbs, all right, which get broken down into glucose. Obviously, all your vegetables, like I just said, peppers, red peppers, carrots, onions, broccoli, cauliflower, yellow squash, all your leafy greens, cabbage. You get the point. I have a lot of clients that don't realize that those vegetables are carbs. And when you break them down in your body, they are going to get broken down into the components, which are going to be water, fiber, and glucose. All right. So I'm not saying they're bad, because I'm not saying you can't eat sugar, like, carbohydrates being sugar. I'm saying you need to eat them in the form that they were created in nature, or as close to that as possible, if you want to avoid belly fat when you're over 50. All right. So all your vegetables. And then you have your fruits and starchy vegetables. So, berries and strawberries and bananas and pears and nectarines and, kiwi and all peaches. All those fruits will get digested ultimately down into glucose in your body. All right. Starchy vegetables like sweet potato, beans, what am I missing here? Winter squashes, parsnips, peas, corn. These are your starchy vegetables. And if you're eating them in the state that they grew in nature, all right, cooking them, of course, but then they are going to be on your plan. All right. All right. Now, in addition, now we're getting into the territory we have to be a little more careful when you're over 50, and that is our grains. So, rice, oatmeal, whole wheat. I'm trying to think of the more common things. These are the ones that we tend to eat more. And we will eat oatmeal. We could have steel cut oats, oatmeal flakes. Rices, brown rice, black rice, wild rice, basmati rice, wheat, whole grain sprouted wheats in breads and muffins and, pitas and wraps. It's when we take those grains or the starchy vegetables and then we break them down by processing them into a powder, then they become problematic with insulin, because they go into the bloodstream really fast, and then they boost up blood sugar. And then if you have that produces high insulin, that then can create insulin resistance. And when that's combined with cortisol and stress, belly fat. All right. So as an over 50 female and male, you're going to do yourself favors and try and better manage belly fat if you are choosing like a sprouted grain, whole grain bread over a multi-grain bread or a white bread, or a sprouted whole grain bagel or wrap over a white flour bagel or wrap. All right. And included in these categories are all these net carb, they've added fiber and then they say that's better. They're not better. They are still refined and processed and are going to hit that bloodstream fast with the glucose. All right. And throw off your insulin levels, which is going to contribute to belly fat. So what you want to do when you're over 50 and 60 as a male and female is you've got to really be mindful. I'm not saying never eat a Pop-Tart or a bagel or pizza, but I'm saying to you, you really do have to do a different ratio. If 90% of the grain products that you're eating or the starchy vegetables, because now we have, sweet potato flour that is now made into a pizza dough. And because it has been turned into a flour, that is not the same as eating a sweet potato in its whole state. All right. So the starchy vegetables and the grain products that are in the refined category, you really want to try to minimize the amounts you're having of those and replace some of them with these whole grain, sprouted grain, and whole vegetable sources. So an illustration of this is eat a sweet potato as part of your dinner, or half of one, depending on the size, versus like sweet potato flour pasta, right? We need to be moving back into whole foods. You don't want to completely cut out the starchy carbs, because that's another mistake that my over 50 clients do that causes a similar problem to belly fat by going too low in them, that being too high in the refined versions of them cause. Because when you go too low in carbs for any extended period of time, that causes cortisol release. It's stressful to your body. Your body thinks there's a crisis going on. And even though there's what I call like a newlywed period of where it looks like that's working to be like on a really, 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 really low carb regime, it doesn't work in the long run, especially for women in post-menopause, but definitely not for men either. So you don't want to cut the starchy whole food versions of starchy carbs out. You want to make sure you're getting them in the state where, if you pulled it out of the ground, or you grew it and then you took it out into your kitchen in that state, that's the state it is, and you cook it up. You don't want it in the flour, like it's been turned into a flour and then added into a food to create a food. All right. That is my number one tip for how to manage your insulin when you're over 50 and 60. And managing your insulin, which is directly related to how you're managing your blood sugar, is a major contributor to belly fat when you're over 50. All right. So eat the whole food carbohydrate, eat the whole grain, boil up rice, but try to avoid the gluten-free rice flour cookies. I'm not saying never eat them, but if you eat them 5 times a week, try to have them 1 time or 2 times a week, and then have something in a whole food, like a banana with, some nuts on top of it, as a sweet, as opposed to a refined flour sweet, like a Pop-Tart, for instance, to use an example I already did. All right. So, staying to the whole food sources and not cutting out the starchy carbs, but titrating them, and then, better managing the amounts and the frequency that you're having the refined grain and refined starchy vegetable products. All right, this is tip number 3 in how to manage body fat when you're over 50, 60, 70, and beyond for males and females. Stay tuned. I have another one that's food related in the next episode number 4 of this 6-part series. If you're enjoying and learning from what you're watching, please like and subscribe to my station. Please go to my website, judyterrell.com. Please go to my platform, yoursecond50.life, your second words, 50 in numbers.life. And I have resources that are very specific to our demographic, 50, 60, 70, and older, men and women both. Nowhere do I see anywhere where there's a platform that has information that has been sifted out and homogenized for just us. So check it out, everybody. As always, let's make our second 50 even better than our first. Thank you for joining me, and I hope to see you again really soon. In the meantime, have an awesome day and an awesome life. Thanks for listening, everybody. And if you'd like to have access to more of my resources, then you can reach me at Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. You can go to my new platform at yoursecond50.life. That is yoursecond50.life, or at my website, www.judyterrell.com.